Hey guys, this is Jack from Team Empire, and today we're going to be talking about the new Dark States ride line for Set 9, Almajestar, or Unica. We already covered Unica in a short video I did, and my thoughts haven't necessarily changed, but since we have the ride line, we now have context as to how easy it is to get your triggers in your soul, or more importantly, your critical triggers in soul. So I think without further ado, let's get talking about them. This is going to be a relatively short video. The first one we have is Almajestar Pupus Mulchi, which is a grade 0. It's the same as every other grade 0, just when rode upon, when second, draw a card. Very standard, and unlike something like Avant-Garde, you don't need this card in your soul, so you can really play anything. But hey, it has waifu energy, so if you want to play it, then that's fine. Then we have Almajestar Schwart Sparta, who says, when a student is rode upon by Almajestar Turan Dyna, soul charge 2, and if a critical trigger was soul charged, you draw a card. And then act Rearguard Circle once per turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost bind a critical trigger from your soul. Hey guys, Future Jack here. Don't listen to me, I'm dumb. I didn't read that. It says bind a trigger unit from your soul and not a critical trigger. This makes this card way better because you can just bind one of your excess triggers you don't need. So yeah, no, don't listen to me. It says any trigger, read your cards. Don't be a Yu-Gi-Oh player. And this unit gets plus 10k power until end of that turn. Overall, pretty standard grade 1, just kind of like gives you soul, for Dark States anyways. You know, it gives you soul. It can plus, although I think it's a little bit worse than some other ones that we have, since it has to be specifically a critical trigger. If it was like a trigger unit, then it'd be a lot better, since normally you do soul charge triggers. But because it has to be a soul charge, a critical trigger, this can actually whiff, so you won't be able to get that draw very often. But when you do, it can be pretty nice. And that rearguard skill, I would say like, oh, you're not really going to be using that. You're not going to be using this in the main deck. We don't have to worry about that because the grade 2 actually calls this from the soul. So this skill becomes a lot more viable. As for how good this skill is, I'm not quite sure, because I'm not sure why you'd want to bind a critical straight away when you want to bind them for Unica. Now you could just bind one and then use Unica to bind the other two, so you automatically have your 3. It is a little slow though. It's because your opponent's Vanguard has to be grade 3 or greater. So I mean, if you're going second, it's not a bad card. 18k booster is not bad at all. It's really good. So I think this card actually is pretty decent for the deck. I might need to do some testing with it to see how valuable that bind a critical for 10k power is. Next up, we have the grade 2, which is Almajestar Turan Dyna, who says auto when student is rode upon by a unit with Astroea? I don't really know how to say that. In its name, choose a Almajestar Schwart Sparta from your soul and call that card and this card to Rearguard Circle. And then act Rearguard Circle once per turn. If you have a Vanguard with Almajestar in its card name, cost Counterblast 1, choose 2 trigger units from your drop and put them into your soul, and this unit gets plus 5k power until end of turn. This is, so to make up for the grade 1's kind of mediocre on ride effect, this one has an amazing when rode upon effect. You could straight up get a plus 2 in terms of card advantage, or technically plus 1. You're discarding a card for your Vanguard, but then you just get 2 rearguards, so technically a plus 1, but it's a plus 2 to field. So that's really good, just to get your plays going straight away from turn 3. And her rearguard skill is actually amazing too. She gives you your trigger units from your drop zone consistently, so you can possibly get some criticals that you guarded with early in there, or if you already used Unica's effect, you can just put more draws or heals in there, so you can soul blast them out and use Unica's first ability to give some of your units power. On top of that, she also gets power. So I think this is a really solid ride line card. It's been a while since we had a card like this. It's like, you want to play it obviously in the ride deck since it's the ride deck card, but it's also just like a really good rear guard. I think it's very cool. So yeah, I think she's also maybe considered in the main deck, just because she does so much for the deck. Then finally, we have the grade 3, which is the Astroea Unica, who says when a trigger unit is soul blasted for your unit's cost, you choose one of your units and it gets 5k power. When it attacks a Vanguard, cost Soul Blast 3, bind all critical triggers Soul Blasted for this cost, and perform all the following based on the number of critical triggers in your bind zone. 1 or more, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. 2 or more, this unit gets critical plus 1 until the end of that battle. And 3 or more, this unit gets drive plus 1 until the end of that battle. So after seeing some of the ride line cards, we do see that it's a lot easier to get that condition off than it was when it was just her. But there are some other cards in previous sets, I should say, that actually do make the condition a little easier. We have a card called Inhale Pit from set 7 that allows you to Soul Blast a grade 1 or greater in order to put 2 trigger units from your drop zone into your soul. I would say the card's a little bit worse now because we have Turan, the grade 2, that basically does that, but doing Soul Blast 1 and she gets power. But who knows, maybe they'll both want to be considered. It's up for testing at that point. The other card that my teammate Lupe pointed out to me was a card called, also from set 7, called Steady Spiky, which is a grade 2 that says when it's placed in a record circle, you counterblast 1 and put a grade 0 card from your hand into your soul to choose a grade 1 or greater card from your soul and add it to your hand. So it allows you to retrieve PGs, maybe rearguard attackers, combo pieces, or persona ride back to your hand, which is really good and also fuels Unica's playstyle. You can put a critical trigger you have in your hand into Unica's soul and then soul blast it out to get the extra crits, the retires, and the drive checks. Next up we have Kit's Peak Griffin, which is a grade 2 double rare, and it says auto when this unit is placed on rearguard circle. If you have a Vanguard with Almajestar in its card name, choose 2 trigger units from your drop and put them into your soul. And then continuous in rearguard circle or guardian circle. If your bind zone has a critical trigger, this unit gets plus 5,000 power and plus 5k shield, and it's active on the opponent's turn. Always nice to have a card with extra power and extra shield. 10k shields are very nice, especially in a deck that wants trigger units in your soul. You're going to need a lot of cards with extra shield. On top of that, I think it's even more of a reason not to play Inhale Pit, mostly because you have the grade 2 Turan and you have this new grade 2 who also puts triggers from your drop into your soul. So maybe the grade 2 from the ride line Turan and Steady Spiky, you can make like a really cool grade 2 core in the deck. But yeah, there's not much to say here. It's just a very solid double rare. Overall, Unica seems pretty strong. Well, not strong, but she seems decently strong, because there's a lot of cards that enable her consistency. You can just keep putting trigger units from your drop zone into your soul, so you can keep having her give 5k power to your units. And like I said before in the short video, you don't actually need to bind 3 critical triggers every time for her skill. You just need to have 3 crits bound. So you could just Soul Blast 3 to get all those effects straight away. Plus, like Grand Fier, this deck doesn't really use any cost besides Soul. So, for instance, any card that has like CB costs later in the future can be considered for Unica, because as of right now, the only card that uses CB is Turan. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for joining me on this video. Let me know your thoughts on Unica down below, and whether or not you think she's going to be a strong contender in set 9 meta. Anyway, guys, thank you. Bye.